Hi guys, welcome to the channel Nightmare Chronicles. Today we have something special for you. 3 spooky and mystical stories that were published on Reddit. Get comfortable because these stories are sure to make your heart beat faster. Don't forget to give us a like if you like scary stories and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. Enjoy watching. Let's go. Story number 1, my creepy school friend. I've never had too many experiences I could deem creepy in my life. Honestly, I live a pretty mundane but fun life. However, I had an experience with an old acquaintance from school that kept me pretty paranoid for a good bit of my childhood years. I won't give anyone the real names of these people, so I'll just call the girl in this story Jess. For a while during my school years, starting in elementary up to middle school, I went to school with Jess. I wasn't friends with her, but I knew her and I wouldn't turn down any time to talk with her. She was always very odd in the way she presented herself. She was always dainty and sort of kept to herself. It may be odd to say, but she had an almost ethereal vibe to her. Blue eyes, complete albino white hair, and was always soft-spoken. Very princess-like. Anyways, I always occasionally approached her, but nothing much else for a good while. You know, the usual early childhood school acquaintances sort of dynamic. One day I was at our local park during the weekend when her and her little brother came to the park. It was a bit of a surprise, but a welcome one. I played the usual park games with them, caught up, and in general just had a good time. Eventually, we ended up playing hide and seek. I was the seeker, if I remember well. I found her little brother, and we eventually found her at the top of the slide. Our town's park used to have a giant frog slide where you could sit on a platform on the top and go down 3 different slides. We found her, and as she ran up the ladder when we caught her going down the other end, her tone shifted. Like completely shifted. She had an unnerving, stern expression, a stark contrast to how she was acting before. She then, without warning, said, "I'm going to kill you," to me. Seeing her have this sudden change and verbal threat towards me genuinely scared me and made me feel like I did something horribly wrong. I ran to hide somewhere in the park for what felt like half an hour. Soon enough, she eventually confronted me and came clean. She apologized and revealed to me what she had apparently been keeping from me. She revealed to me that she was actually a vampire. No, I'm not making this up. She told me straight up that she was actually a vampire and was keeping it secret from everyone to not reveal the truth. This is where I need to bring up a crucial detail about this girl. For all of my time knowing her, she genuinely, wholeheartedly believed she was a vampire. To this day, I don't believe this was some sort of screwing with people for shits and giggles. She genuinely believed it, eventually told the truth to one of my close friends, went into disturbing detail about what she didn't during the night, and constantly made sure I didn't tell anyone. The reason I say that is at that park, on that playset that evening, she told me straight to my face that with her powers, she could see what I was doing 24/7. And if I told anyone, like friends, teachers, or even my own parents, that she'd come to my house in the middle of the night and kill me. I know this sounds really stupid, but to me as a really gullible young kid, I couldn't tell what was real, and that wasn't. So as far as I knew, she was genuinely threatening me. I left that park with the knowledge of this idea she set into my head, and it genuinely affected me. I kept the secret for years, even after she left the school. I was genuinely torn with decision multiple times in my life, fighting between telling my mom and not telling my mom, since I felt so horrified about what she might do to me either way. Eventually, years later, I came to learn that it wasn't real, obviously, but the years I lived with that paranoia in the back of my mind can't be taken back. Even my current friend group agrees about how odd of an individual she was and how off-putting she felt. I know how stupid I seemed back then for genuinely believing it, but honestly I reacted in the most realistic way I could. It may have been complete BS, but the idea of someone threatening you to come to your house and kill you in your sleep isn't normal. Wherever she is, I hope Jess is doing well, and I hope she eventually grew out of this phase she seemed to be in for a good while. Story number 2, my daughter almost kidnapped. One day after I picked up my, at the time, 4-year-old daughter from school, I took her to a McDonald's. She loves it, of course, and it was nice to once a week not have to cook her anything at home. Anyways, the McDonald's we went to is a pretty busy one, in a nice area. It's on the corner of a major city street, It was after school hours, so between traffic from that and the people that were getting off early, there was no shortage of cars on the road. This is in broad daylight too, as it's right after school. We went through the drive-through. This is important. So the McDonald's is busy enough to have you pull up past the window you get your food at because they didn't have it ready, but not too busy where you see the long line and say, screw that. So I order our food, get to the window, pay, and the worker says, please go park in the drive-through spot and we'll bring your food out to you. Okay, perfect. So I pull in facing forward because it's angled parking. Normally I'm an exclusive back-in parker because I want a quick exit. I'm just weird like that. Well, the one time I don't back in because it's angled parking, as we're waiting, I see a car pull in off the road and park right next to us. Little weird because it's the drive-through spot and they didn't order. There were two men. The driver and then the passenger got out and came around to the back passenger seat where my daughter was sitting in her car seat. He tried to open the door a couple of times, but thank God it was locked. He noticed he wasn't getting in and walked back around to his passenger side of the car. By this time, I noticed what happened and turned in my seat to face him and hold my arms out like, what are you doing? He then mouthed sorry and then got in the car and they drove off. Now, I don't know if he was trying to rob me or kidnap my daughter. I think because he went for the back seat by her, it was meant for a kidnapping. If he wanted to rob me, he would have came to my window. He wasn't armed and she was buckled in, so I don't know even if he did open the door, what he expects would have happened. I have long arms and at minimum I could have reached back and grabbed her legs to cling onto for dear life and almost use her as leverage to pull myself closer to her and across into the back seat. I, of course, in America, we drive on the left side, could have reached with my right hand while using my left hand that is naturally down by the seatbelt to unbuckle, use her as leverage to pull myself into the back seat or her towards me, and she would have almost been a tug-of-war piece, but I don't know what he expected would have happened. I don't know the motives behind it, and the men drove off. It wasn't a van, it was a small compact car, and the driver stayed in the driver's seat. He also pulled in facing forward, so he had to back out and then shift gears to then go forward. So even if he did grab a hold of my daughter, the man would have needed to somehow get her in the car and then himself in the car and close the door before I could run around to, at minimum, catch the door from closing. Even to say if he did manage to get her and himself in the car, he had to back out so I would have had time to get back in my truck and speed off to follow him. I now never ever unlock my doors, even though I've since moved to a very nice area, and this occurred in a pretty decent area. I always have been OCD and a little perfectionist, so I don't really ever keep my gas tank below half. Typically at 3/4, I go top off to keep the payments cheaper, and then I'm just always full, so I would have had plenty of gas to follow him for as long as need be while I called authorities. Crime is not a problem where this took place. Before I even drive, I make sure my doors are locked, and when I'm parked, at a standstill, in a drive-through, etc., I will hit my lock button multiple times to make sure it's locked. Luckily, I had a nice enough vehicle that it automatically locked before being cognizant of making sure they're locked. I now try to make sure I'm always close to full on my gas tank if I ever got in a chase. It's all a little overboard, but after that scary encounter I had, I can never be too prepared. Story number 3, creature beside the window. This happened to me 2 years ago now, and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I've always tried to rationalize it, but never could. I live in the countryside of Ireland, right in the middle of nowhere, so it's very rare that I hear noises outside. And when I do 99% of the time, it's a cow that's escaped the field beside us into our garden, or our dog barking at a person waking by. But there is still that 1% of the time, and I can't explain what the 1% was. This happened on some night in late spring. The night was dark and clear. I could see every star in the sky. At around midnight, I went into the kitchen to get a midnight snack, normal teenager activities. As I was getting my snack, I started hearing noises outside. I didn't think much of it, assuming it was probably some sort of animal, but it only got louder, so I opened the window to try get a better look, or be able to hear it better. And all that I could see was my dog standing beside the back door, not taking its eyes of the forest behind our house. But the noise was one of the worst things I've ever heard. The only way I can possibly explain it was metal being scraped, but more croaky, I guess. What worried me most was how my dog wasn't barking at whatever it was she was scared, which is unlike her, and she was a big dog, Newfoundland. The fact she wasn't barking made me believe it wasn't an animal, as my dog wouldn't have hesitated to get to it, but I couldn't explain it. So I brought the dog inside and went to bed, but it felt like the sound followed me to my room. Now the sound was at the front of my house, which didn't make sense on how it got there so quickly. I decided to shut my curtains and try get some sleep, and as soon as I pulled the covers over me, there was a tap on my window. I stayed under the covers, listening to it, and it was constant tap, tap, tap. It sounded like little stones being thrown at my window. This carried on for, I don't know how long, but I fell asleep eventually, and the next day I started talking to my neighbors, and I found out a man had moved into the house just around the corner from us. I asked around and found out things about him. He was supposedly not a law-abiding citizen. He had many run-ins with the guards, and it was said he was a major drug dealer and probably on some major drugs. A month later, there was a massive amount of weed and other drugs found in a shed down the road from me, and I never seen that man again. What I believe happened that night was the druggie was trying to torment me while he was high, but I have no idea how he was able to make that sound for at least 3 hours straight and the run around my house in less than a few seconds. And how long was he there for? Because he timed it perfectly. It really just doesn't make sense to me. What I still wonder to this day is what would have happened to me if I went to see what it was. What were its intentions? Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you like these scary stories, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell to not miss new creepy stories. And in the comments, share which story scared you the most or tell your own scary story. See you in the next video.